right, welcome everybody to our first episode of The Partnership. I'm Franz-Josef. I'm your host for today. I'm head of partnerships here at Hopin, and my guest today is Marco De Paulis, head of partnerships at Whiplash and Ryder. Hey Marco, how are you?
Hey, Franz. I'm doing excellent, man. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'm pretty excited because this is the first time we're hosting this show. So, in order to celebrate with our audience, I wanted to do a small giveaway today. So, I learned a lot about partnerships through books, which is why I wanted to give away one of my favorite books, which is The Sumo Advantage. It's how to leverage business development to team up with heavyweights to grow in any environment. And it is a book which brought me a lot of lessons and I learned a ton from it. So I wanted to share that with the audience. So if you want to enter today's giveaway, just simply drop hashtag the ship in the chat for today's giveaway. And at the end, we'll draw a winner as part of our raffle. So
Love
without
that.
further
I got to
ado,
get a copy myself.
yeah, have you read it?
I have not, no.
All right. I might have to drop one to you as well. All right. I wanted to start with a question, just because there was a lot of talk about you being the partnerships pipeline king. Daniel Lancioni actually called you that for the first time. So I wanted to just understand why are you called the 10 million pipeline king, Marco?
It is not self-named, and for those who don't know Daniel, he's an absolute riot. It started because I came to this organization, Whiplash, which was acquired by Ryder, or now Ryder e-commerce. And in my first year, I was fortunate enough to drive a very, very, very healthy pipeline for the business. And I did a post on Crossbeam about it with Sean Blanda. And it was in the tens of millions of dollars in our first year. And now that we're a publicly traded company, can't disclose the exact amount. And so that's kind of where it stuck and it landed. And ended up doing a couple other events around that general topic with Justin Zimmerman and a few other people. So yeah, obviously you need pipeline to close revenue. And so, at the end of the day, partnerships people don't typically close revenue. At least, in my experience, we usually give it to sales. And so focusing on pipeline is really important for my team and just in my career.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congrats on the plus $10 million. Nobody knows how much it really is at the moment, but that's
It's
a
an
great
enterprise
achievement. Yeah.
business. So there's some big contracts, but with that, they take a lot longer to close. So that's the
Yeah.
downside.
Right. And it's not just that you opened one partnerships program from the ground up, but you actually built two partnerships programs, one at Ryder and one at Privy. And I wanted to ask you just to kick us off. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey of building your first partnerships program, either at Privy
Yeah.
or at Ryder, whichever you think is more
Yeah.
interesting?
Yeah. I mean, I actually even kind of got into it on the agency side. So I worked for 3 different agencies before coming over to SaaS. And it was at the last agency I worked at where I kind of was building a partnerships function. Wasn't a program. Agencies don't usually have programs, but a very specific focus and function on how to work with our SaaS partners and how to, kind of build a workflow to drive pipeline for our business as well as theirs. And I jumped over to Privy because I wanted to just do that full time on the SaaS side, having a lot of that agency experience, but being very tired of working at agencies, candidly. You could burn out pretty easily there. And so I came to Privy, and this was 2019. So e-commerce was really heating up. This is pre-pandemic. And I had a lot of, connections to the agency world because of my time there in e-commerce. But two, I had a lot of, great ideas and sort of strategies because I just had that familiarity. And so came into Privy. It was not my goal to build a massive program. I ended up building a program of 600 partners, a little more than that in 2 years. And it was really just, crazy rapid growth. Everything at Privy between 2019, 2021 was just rapid growth across the entire business, right? Just sales, revenue, the team, and naturally, right, we were just in that same mindset, that same trajectory. But I didn't grow my team at the same rate that I grew the program. We grew the program from 10 to 600. I didn't have the tools or the team to continue to give the same level of quality support and engagement and interaction and value to the partners that I could when it was 50 or 100 or even 200 partners, right? And so some big learnings I took from that. I was able to hire people. I was able to get dedicated resources from sales, customer success, folks like that. But even then, you're talking about like a massive scale. You needed a bigger team if you really wanted to squeeze out the most, value for the business out of those 600 partners. And so it got to a point where 80% of our revenue was coming from 20% of the program. And
Mhm.
you don't realize that, right, until you get really big and you start to kind of look back and you're like, oh man, this is not necessarily like the healthiest balance, right? And so when I ended up taking a new role here at Whiplash, now Ryder, I had the complete opposite mindset. I said, look, there's no point in spending time with hundreds of partners, let alone dozens of partners, if at the end of the day the cards fall where again only 20% of them are really the ones that are engaged in driving revenue. And so coming in and building it for a second time for more of a SaaS and services business that is not agency, I took the approach of saying, let's just keep a really narrow focus on our partners. And I want to go deeper with those partners and build better relationships and add a lot more value to those guys rather than going wide and kind of having surface level partner relationships.
Yeah. That's a that's a great lesson. It's great to hear that you were able to like take the lessons from the first time building a partnerships program and applying it to the second. One thing I wanted to ask you about is when you were at Privy and you realized that 20% of the partners were driving 80% of revenue, did you do anything to like revamp your partnerships program to like
Yeah.
like tailor it more towards that 20%, or was it just a sunk
Yep.
cost? Because I can imagine there are a lot of people here listening today who might be working on partnerships programs where they see the similar pattern, right? I feel like we had the exact same with Hopin as well. We have close to 300 agencies and we have more than 50 integration partners. And, a lot of them are actually not driving as much value as like the top 10 or 20% of the program.
Yeah. And that's natural, right? But you wanna get to a point where that 20% is looking more like 30, 40, 50%, right? And there's two ways to do it. One, you can just trim things down and kind of stay the course that you're saying. Or you can, try and evolve your program to better fit the wide array of businesses that you work with, right? And so we did a relaunch of our agency program probably when I was a year or so in, and I was making a new hire and I had some dedicated resources. And one of the big changes we did, so we had a tiered structure, bronze, silver, gold, not uncommon, and Martech. And a lot of it was measured by MRR, monthly recurring revenue, right? And so
Yeah.
you had to hit a new MRR tier to be able to qualify for this, the next benefits, the next tier benefits, right? And when you have so many partners, not everybody is necessarily a big agency or works with big clients, but they might be just as dedicated to you as a partner, and they may be pitching, even more clients than a couple agencies that just get a couple whales, right? And so that balance made me uncomfortable. And so one of the big things we changed was doing using an or metric for revenue or quantity of converted leads. So to say, hey, you can be a silver or gold if you bring X dollars of revenue, or conversely, if you bring us, call it 10 converted accounts. Those 10 converted accounts may end up being the same MRR, a little bit less, a little bit more, but we wanted to incentivize partners who may be, just they feel like that's an unattainable number, right? And allowing us to better work with and dedicate more time to agencies who had smaller clients again, but were referring us on every single deal, every single opportunity that they could, against the ones who, again, maybe came in, they referred one or two that closed, and they were just not engaged with us, but they were getting all the commission benefits. And so that was one of the big changes we made, which did make it did make a difference in some of the engagement and how we were able to give back to some of those partners, maybe who were a little bit smaller.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think it touches on a really interesting point, which is program design. One of your mantras, which you mentioned at your previous interviews and in your blog posts, has been don't predict, ask, right? So
Mhm.
getting that feedback from your agency partners. So when you set up that new program at Writer or Whiplash, like how did you make sure that your agencies are actually heard and they actually get something from the program that you like that they will actually benefit from, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I take that approach not just with partners, but also internally. So, you know, as partner people, especially ones who have kind of done the job maybe at a previous organization, you come in with some ideas of how to do things, right? And sometimes you just make decisions because you think that's the way it is or it should be. And I think a lot of times it's just you're shooting yourself in the foot if you don't stop, take a step back, and just really ask one the partners that you have, but also two the internal teams, like what's important to them. Do these do you care about these benefits? Do you care about these partners? Do you care about these metrics? Do like tell me what is important to you, and I will design what I need to design around that. And something I've talked a little bit about on LinkedIn in the past is especially for young programs or somebody starting out in partnerships early on. I think there's a natural tendency to go and like design a program before you really bring on any partners or partners at scale. And I think that's the wrong way to do it because again, you're just making assumptions that somebody wants this level of commission and wants this type of co-marketing and wants whatever these benefits are that you have in your tiers, and you
Yeah.
haven't validated that. And I see so many people redesign an agency program just like I had to do because something was designed before it was really implemented and being used, right? It's like trying to um architect something without having any empathy for who is going to be using the facility or the building. It doesn't really work, right? Things are just going to not be used the way you anticipated because people think differently. And especially if you don't have that experience working at that agency or at that SaaS company or in that industry, you truly don't know what is going to be important to them or important to those stakeholders. So whenever you find yourself just like making an assumption or just doing something because you're in the flow and you know that that's how like it's done, just pause and double check, triple check, ask your partners if they care about that or what's important to them, what their goals are. And the same thing for your internal teams, really understand, uh, do you want to consume information this way? Do you want to spend, time doing this, that, the other thing? How can we best support you? And don't make any assumptions as to how, you're going to enable them or support them.
Yeah. It's so crucial. I think Aaron actually made a good point here as well that ask is like the key to building experiences people want to engage with. And
For sure.
before I took over partnerships at Hopin, I was actually a startup founder. And we preach a lot about the lean methodology in startups where you actually should build your products based on customer feedback. And a partner program sounds like it's no difference, right? Like
Yeah.
similarly, when we built our partner program at Hopin, we were like very reliant on like our core group. Initially, we started with like 10 agencies and we build it for them. We like ask them what they want from this program, how should
Yeah.
we structure pricing that it works for them. And there's a bit of a give and take because sometimes like an agency might ask for more than what you're willing to give, so you have to balance your internal and external stakeholders. But
Yep.
that feedback is key, right? One thing
100%.
I did notice though is like it's always easy to like say you should get feedback, but it's hard to actually do implement it in practice. So do you have a story maybe or an example of a time where you got meaningful feedback from your partners or internal teams and how you implemented it?
For internal teams, I mean, we are constantly trying to get feedback and constantly iterating on all of our enablement. I'd say that that's where you can be the most nimble. Um, and so, for example, I started this almost, coming on 2 years now in a month or so, or a couple months. Started doing enablement first with just, some sort of like mass emails and then doing a monthly session with a partner. And I would make sure that, every month or so, I'd start to, I would just ping some people individually and ask them how they felt about things. If it was useful, I would put questions in the email, see if people, caught on something, would reply to me, try and put calls to action. And we've taken such different approaches now and iterated so much on how we share this information. So we've gone to, we've changed up the medium and the type of content in our emails. We've added video, we've added GIFs, we have removed all the slides from our enablement sessions and the classic lunch and learn or what we call a spotlight, and we just do interactive Q&A or like sort of game activity based stuff. We've gotten into to do a lot of things in person, And one of the great in-person sessions that we've done, and Caitlin Teed on my team ran this for a couple different in-person initiatives with our internal teams, was a stop, start, continue, where you get, maybe big pieces of paper or whatever it is on the walls, and you have your teams tell you what to start doing, what to stop doing, and what to continue doing. And you pick a topic. And so enablement was a big one for us, and we learned on. We've also completely redone our internal directory. We started building it in Notion, and later realized that Notion was not necessarily a company wide tool. It was just between a couple departments. And so there were many departments that just did not even know we had an internal directory. And we had to go rebuild it somewhere else and completely restructure it. So those are some of the learnings and iterations that, if you just assume, right, people are going to use Notion, you just assume they want email, you just assume they want a deck in a lunch and learn, then you're just going to keep doing the same thing, and you're going to not see, you're not going to see a change in the outcome or the results.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you got to meet your teams where they are, right? Like if they're not in Notion, it's going to be a pain for them to actually go to Notion to find this information.
Oh
So
yeah, you can't
you have to
ask
enable them.
anybody to do anything, right? Like anytime you ask somebody to take a step, the probability of them doing that thing goes down like 75%. So you got to
Yeah.
meet them where they are. And we try and work differently and enable different departments in different ways. So like we split up the sessions that we do. We create different content and different emails for different teams because we just know they work differently and they like to ingest information differently.
Yeah, 100%. I think enablement is such a key piece as well. Like you can do so much work around your partner program and you can enable your external partners, but if your internal teams aren't able to actually work with partners, then the whole program is destined to fail, right? Uh,
100%.
when it comes to enablement, when is the best time to start enabling your teams?
I start day zero. Enablement to me is a sort of a two-pronged thing. It's alignment, and then it's the actual activities of enablement. So if you don't have any alignment with any of these teams you're trying to enable, nothing's going to work because nothing you bring to them is going to resonate. And so that's something that I'm very cautious of, and I talk a lot about. Early days, start with alignment. You have to do that at the top, and you have to do that with the leaders of each team. You have to do that with the exec team, of course, but then you got to go from the bottom up, and you have to win champions in each department, and slowly, one by one, get them to buy in, get them to actually act on some of the things that you're trying to enable them around, right? um, and enablement is critical because we rely on everybody to add the value to our partners that we are promising them, right? Like we're not able to do all that much because we're not typically customer facing. We don't own the marketing channels. We are just like internal lever pullers and button pushers and orchestrators and beggars, frankly. And so if you don't have that bind, you don't have that enablement, really working well, you're not going to be able to drive the referrals to your partners. You're not going to be able to get the co-marketing resources or the customer support resources or the dev resources to do anything you need to do to add value to your partners. So I focus on internal enablement first before I even really focus a whole lot on enabling the partners, because I don't expect them to give me anything. I expect to go to them first and bring them value, bring them referrals and leads, to then get them excited to work with us, and then it's going to come back around.
Yeah. Yeah, the entire tech ecosystem is built on paying it forward. And I feel like nowhere does it resonate more than in partnerships, right? Because if you don't
For
send
sure.
leads to your partner first, why would they send you some, right? Like somebody has to
And
do
it's
it
it's
first.
hard to do. So you really have to work at it. And if you don't build that muscle early on, you're just going to you're going to grow partner program at a faster rate than you can grow and actually send out referrals and actually deliver value to your partners. And so that lack of balance is then just going to hold you back from really maximizing your potential as a partner organization.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, Akil dropped a really good comment here because he also said that enabling from day one is key, because an enrollment and enablement have to run in parallel. But one thing I
Mhm.
heard you say is that maybe enablement actually has to start before day one, right? So you have to actually enable before you even start enrolling partners or before you enable the partners because you want to make sure that your teams know what to do when the launch day comes, right? So
Yeah,
how do you
that's
get
my approach.
buy-in? How do you get buy-in from your teams? Because like if there's nothing launched yet, like why would they like care about your partnerships program if there's no revenue tied to it yet, or there's no opportunity tied to it yet?
You're talking about a lot of lofty things at first, frankly, right? Like we're gonna do this, we're gonna build that. This is what we're gonna focus on. I think there's two key points into enabling your internal teams before you really have a partner, ecosystem where you have partners in your organization or as a part of your function. One is you want to, get them to understand what it is and what you are trying to accomplish, but most importantly, how what you're trying to accomplish is going to align with their goals. And so I did a whole presentation on this like a year ago now almost, where I broke out the goals by every department. Marketing cares about traffic and reach. Okay, how does partnerships impact that? And make sure you understand their goals and make sure they understand how you can help them get there. You're going to get alignment. Same thing with customer success. If you know and you can bring data and show them that partners are going to decrease churn, increase retention, and you know that that's a goal for them, then you want to connect those dots and connect that data and get them to understand and then get them to say, okay, I will help you do this, but I'm going to need you to spend some time with our partners to support them. Same thing with sales, same thing with marketing, right? Like you have to tie those goals to what you are going to do to help them get there. And then that's how you get two people rowing in the same direction, right? And then, again, it is some lofty things like this is what we're going to focus on. This is what we're going to do. Ask for feedback. Again, go back to the ask thing. Like, is this what you think we should be doing? Are these the organizations you think we should be partnering with? Do you know of quote unquote partners that we might already have, or like friendly players that we might already have that maybe we should be talking to or partnering with, and get them involved early, because then it's less like you pushing them to do things for you. Their involvement is actually contributing to what you are trying to then build together.
Yeah. I think the point about like asking about feedback for, partners that you're already working with is super crucial, because when I think back at like when we built out our partnerships program in Hopin, when I went to the customer success org, it turned out they already had 3-4 agencies they were actively
Yep.
working with. And what happened
Pretty
was that
common.
the agencies reached out to the customer success folks and just said, if you ever have a customer who needs services which we don't offer ourselves, send them to me. And so the customer success org, not that they had a program, but they had all these informal relationships which already existed. So those partners are like the number one starting point, in my opinion.
For sure.
Because they already know your product, right? They already know
Exactly.
your team, they know your product. The main challenge will be to actually formalize the relationship. So they can't just go to a random customer success org.
Yes.
But rather they should ask the partnerships team to formalize this relationship and then get leads sent through a formal channel where we can track them, rather than just word of mouth and like.
I'd rather start there though.
Yeah,
I would much rather start there. Yeah. I talk to a lot of small companies or even larger companies that are trying to start partnerships. And I always recommend, look first at who might be using your product, who's engaging with customer success. If it's MarTech, see if you can go in the back end and find accounts that have, multiple people from an agency or even anybody from an agency type of domain, and start there. And again, before you get a program live, ask those people, get involved with those people. To your point, if there's familiarity with your product and the value of your product, you have skipped steps like 1 to 5, right? In building a new partnership. That's the hardest part. Actually convincing somebody that you can, you can accomplish the, sort of metrics and deliver the value that you're promising in all your marketing collateral, and getting that first, sort of like pilot customer. That's the hardest. That takes the most work and the most time. Once you cross that barrier, it's almost like you start to go downhill, things speed up. So you skip a lot of those steps when you start working with folks that already know the product and they're already talking with your organization.
Yeah, 100%. Chris from Partnerships Leaders actually gave me a really good tip on this once, because he said like his way of finding your initial partners is to go into your top 5 or 10 accounts. So those might be big companies that are working with you, and look for email addresses of users which are not from that company. So if Google is a customer and all of a sudden they have a random email address in there, which is an agency, you know that there is an agency which Google trusts, which already knows how to use your product and probably has a lot of customers like Google as well. So that's an incredible starting point when you want to open up your first program, because you already have these incredible agencies which are familiar with you. And like you said, you can skip step 1 to 5, basically.
Yeah. I did that a lot of Privy too. We were always kind of trying to keep track of, who was in the accounts and see if we could spot some agency email addresses. And that's where I built a lot of the early partnerships.
Exactly. Like build it and they will come rarely works. Like oftentimes initially you have to go out and actually like
Right.
start getting
Build it and
these
they will come
agencies in.
never works,
Yeah. Same in
in my
startups.
experience.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have another question for you because all of this sounds great. The main barrier though for a lot of folks who want to start a partnerships program, because that's how it worked for me. Like I was initially like, working in sales and a couple of initiatives and then went to the CEO and I said we should have a partnerships program. A lot of barriers here are that CEOs and leadership might not buy in to your partnerships initiatives. So how do you overcome these challenges? How do you sell the team on partnerships? Or if a team is not interested in partnerships, how do you still provide value to your partners?
It's very hard to do the second piece. The first piece, it's the same concept as going to the leads of the different departments, right? And understanding what their goals are, and giving them some data and some sort of qualitative details around how you are going to help hit those targets and support those initiatives that they have. It's the same thing with leadership, right? It's just usually a little bit more high level and broad. Increase revenue, decrease churn, so on and so forth. And so you want to bring the similar points to the conversation there. Something that I do a lot too is I kind of have a taking one step back, like a much broader view of the changes in business and the way that people buy, right? And
Mhm.
it's not the same way that it was 5 years ago, even maybe even more recent, where you would go directly to the vendor and you would just do some demos, ask for pricing, and convert. Now, because there's so many things out there, there's so many options, everyone's an expert, everyone's best in class, global leader. Now folks are turning to their colleagues, their communities, their friends, and they're asking who they should be using and who to talk to. And that's where you need to penetrate from a marketing perspective and get there, and not don't stop doing the other marketing channels you're doing, but you need to continue to add marketing channels, as the times change, right? And so there's a lot of data to support this out there that I pull into slides, and that's usually what I go to leadership with, to show, all right, very high level, this is what's changing in the buying process. Marketing is getting more expensive, more costly to acquire customers, so you need to evolve with the times, and this is one of the best ways that you can do it. And then on the second piece, um, I didn't have a lot of buy-in at Privy necessarily from marketing. That was probably the hardest department for me to really crack. I was close with sales. I had a dedicated rep. I was close to customer success. I had a dedicated rep. They're all dotted line to me. Um, Marketing was the only department that they were just much more into doing their own thing, their own content, and focusing on the Privy brand and traffic to the Privy website, and they really didn't want to do much with other partners. And that really held me back from being able to leverage the fantastic brand that we had, and uh, include our partners and show the community that um, you know these guys know how to do it. They're experts in what they do. They work with a lot of our customers. This is why, and we want to give them the shine and visibility. And I didn't really have that as a lever. I think maybe in 2 years I got four, co-marketing spots for my partners. It was awful. And so it forced me to get really, really creative, to work much more closely with the departments that I did have buy-in and alignment from, but also forced me to just like do more on my, take more of my own time to find ways to deliver value than I probably should have. And that held me back again from being able to add value to more partners. And so I had to spend more time with fewer partners, and I had to really go deeper than what a partner manager should have done. I would go and audit their accounts. I would, put together analyses for them and recommendations. Like, this is customer success work, usually doing it for the accounts. I was doing it for the agency. And it added a ton of value and, helped me stand out as a partner manager, helped us stand out as a partnership in general, but not scalable.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I mean, it's interesting because like that story is so familiar because oftentimes you have to go beyond your job description as a partner manager. I hear so
For
many
sure.
partner managers and partnership leaders who have excuses around, oh, marketing is not bought in, or the sales team doesn't want to work with partners, etc. But oftentimes it's you. Oftentimes you just have to get your hands dirty and go out and actually
Oh, yeah.
like join a sales call. Actually, like draft some marketing materials with the partner that they can use if the marketing
Yep.
team blocks, right?
Wear a
Oftentimes it's
lot
you
of
who has to get
hats.
the results to build that internal support.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, there's some data out there that I have no source for, so I'm not going to repeat this number, but I feel like, and I can confirm my experience doing this for like a good solid 8 years now. I have had to run probably 3 dozen types of different calls, across like more customer success, more marketing, more sales, more tech and dev and integration, right? And like none of those things you're trained on as a partner manager. You just got to figure it out because you are trying to push these things along and get this, this buy-in or help these partners or close that deal or get that integration on the roadmap. And you just got to figure it out and like switch the hats. And you are doing that sometimes multiple times in a day.
Yeah. I feel like this is a whole episode in itself, but we are at time and I don't want to hold everybody too long here
Yes.
because I'm sure you have like other things to do today or want to wrap up your Friday. So before we close out, I just wanted to like remind everybody that we're doing a giveaway. We're giving away the Zumo Advantage, which is one of my favorite partnerships books. And in order to enter, you just have to drop hashtag the ship in the chat, and then we will draw a winner from everybody who entered. In the meantime, we're going to give everybody like 20, 30 seconds to like submit their hashtag. Marco, we learned so much from you today. Who are some of the other partnerships people on LinkedIn that you would recommend everybody to follow apart from yourself, obviously?
There are many, 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 many good ones. I'm gonna call out two, but if anyone wants to follow up with me on LinkedIn, I'll give you a good list of like 10. Aside from Franz, obviously you guys are following him since you're on here. I would say Will Taylor and Chris Lavoie.
Great. Chris is also here and he has entered the raffle. So Will Taylor, very good friend
Good
of
man.
mine. Both of them great follows and they put out great content on LinkedIn as well if you want to learn. That's it. We're gonna
And
close.
different ends of the spectrum too. So you're gonna get a good, variety of flavor there. So yes, thank you
Yeah,
for having me, Franz. I really appreciate it, man.
very true. Yeah. And with that, we're gonna draw a winner. Let's see who is lucky this Friday.
Ooh.
Chris LeBron.
Good
Chris,
work,
I'll be
Chris.
in touch with you on LinkedIn. You got a shout out and a book today. I feel like the real winner of this episode is Chris. And with that being said, thanks again so much for joining us today, Marco. We'll be back in 2 weeks with our next episode, so keep your eyes out for that announcement on LinkedIn. And apart from that, thank you for joining and have a great weekend.
Thanks for having me. Have a good weekend, everyone. Take care.